Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today, the millionaire coach of millionaire coaches, Daniel Mangana. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. We are indeed, and Daniel's going to be joining us in just a few moments. Alex, unfortunately, can't join us today. We're kind of sad that she's not going to be here, but she'll be back next week. But I do have a special guest joining me today. Her name is Leann Stickel, and Leann has quite the story because she got one of those terrifying kind of diagnoses a few years back, and she didn't let it stop her. I mean, we're going to hear the story. The way I read her bio, it's like she didn't even blink. I suspect it was probably more than that, but we'll find out in just a moment. But Leann, first of all, thank you for joining us on the program today. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great. And thank you so much for having me. This is a treat.
It's a lot of fun to have you as well. So why don't you tell it in your own words? What exactly happened? What happened on that day? And then how did you handle it?
Yeah. So I'm going to have to take you back to 2009. So
Okay.
I'm 29. I have 4 kids, 6 and under. It is not hard to imagine that I was distracted, right?
Yes.
All the little kids, all the things, right? Like mom. That's what my day sounded like. So, early symptoms of something going on inside of me that was not exactly perfect, I dismissed. Like, of course I was tired. Of course I had some numbness and tingling and had a pinched nerve because I carried someone on my hip, right? Like, it all made sense. And
Yep.
I believe that I'm genetically optimistic. Like, I know that my late grandfather was just like me and really, really believed that he had the world by the tail, right?
Okay.
And so when you look at life that way, your rose-colored glasses are so darkly tinted that sometimes you miss the red flags. And that it sounds lovely to be optimistic, and it is such a gift that I'm super thankful for, but I did ignore some of the early signs. So I finally gave up because I was annoyed at the numbness on my left side. And I thought I just needed to go see a chiropractor, get straightened out, right? Like maybe I had a pinched nerve and that would solve it. Because, we all have like WebMD and we know what's wrong with us.
Right. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. It doesn't matter that we didn't go to medical school. We had it figured out. And I think that that's a common issue, right? Like one that we need to all address. Be aware, get checked out, do the tests, because there can be something going on. And for me, my family doctor was a gem. And he said, Leann, you know what? If you were 69, I might just send you to a chiropractor. But since you're 29, I really want to check out some other things. And he sent me to a neurologist. And the whole time, Walt, I did not believe that this was worth my time. Like, oh my goodness, there's nothing really wrong with me, right? Like I was a drink your water, eat your fruits and veggies, go for a walk. Babies do, born on their due date. Like that's just, I didn't have any health issues and I didn't have any concerns. So on October 23rd, I had gone through an MRI, gone through like a physical in-person test with the neurologist. And here it's October 23rd. My husband doesn't even come with me because I won't let him. I'm like, don't take time off of work. Like I'm good. I'm fine. I just could not see the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. And so that makes it a long ways to fall. Right. Sure. And when the neurologist said, Leann, we are 99% sure that you have multiple sclerosis, my world dropped. I honestly didn't really know that much about MS, but instantly pictured a wheelchair.
Sure.
And it would not have surprised me if in that moment they put me in a wheelchair and wheeled me out of the doctor's office that I had walked into, right?
Well, you were in a shock. I mean, I can understand why you would feel that way.
Shock, devastation. I use all 3 floors of my home. I chase 4 little kids, right? And so immediately your mind goes to this mobility issue that maybe you've seen in posters, maybe you've seen in drug ads, maybe you know of someone or you know of someone that knows someone, right? There is connections that people have to chronic illness that kind of give you a dangerous understanding of what it is, right? Like just enough to scare you to death.
Which they're good at, by the way.
Say that again.
They're very good at scaring you to death.
Yes, very good. And the truth about chronic illness is that it's chronic.
Hmm.
It's forever. There's no cure. And at the age of 29, to be faced with something that is now yours forever, that's daunting, right? Like that was very, very overwhelming to a person that wakes up positive, wakes up happy, feels hope, to think that this is now my story. This is who I am. This is part of my future. It just felt like so devastating. And so when you said it seemed like I didn't blink, oh dear, I definitely blinked.
You blinked, yes.
I blinked. And, I actually went into a period of mourning. And I always tell people, and I encourage that, to mourn the future that you had pictured, because now that looks different, right? And so it is healthy to honor the hard, honor the sad, that this is different. This wasn't the plan. This does make your bucket list harder, for sure, right? Because of a number of reasons: chronic symptoms, chronic costs, all the burdens, right? Yep. So that was a hard season. And I kind of went into a pity party, like permanently for a while. Why me? Like, this is not what I want to be talking about. This is not what I want to learn about. This is not what I want to spend money on.
Right.
Yeah. So I share all of that for people to understand where I came from to here today. So here we are. We're 12 and a half years post-diagnosis. Okay. So a lot of lessons learned. And it took me getting sick of myself and that pity party to really move forward and say, okay, Leann, that's enough of being sad, right? You have to be in charge of your story. And let's talk now about what you can control, because a diagnosis makes you feel completely out of control.
Sure. That's understandable. Yeah. I think anybody could appreciate that. Yeah, totally.
And it's like, there's a lot of great reasons why I did not go to medical school. And one of them is that I'm not interested. Right? And now to be a good patient and a good advocate for yourself, you need to be interested. You need to learn and educate yourself and learn what all your options are and what's the best one for you. And like, if you aren't dialed into that or enjoy it, that's another burden, right? Another reason that you can have a bad attitude in that season.
Oh, well, it's not hard to imagine how you could end up with that bad attitude. And actually the victory is climbing out of it like you did and kind of getting back to who you originally were, which was certainly helpful because that gave you at least a place to go to. You knew it was there. You'd been there before. So that certainly helps. But yeah, anytime that we're dealing with stuff like that we have been conditioned to believe is permanently debilitating or even lethal, we react. I mean, that's just what we have been trained to do. And so it's not surprising at all you would have that kind of reaction. I think the more impressive part is when you decide to change your reaction. I know for me, that was something that was a big breakthrough moment for me. Now, I've never had that kind of a diagnosis, but I've had, like most people, I've had my own trials and tribulations. And the biggest shock was learning that I could actually decide how I feel about stuff and how I think about stuff. I didn't have to be tied into whatever the official narrative was. I'm never really sure who issues the official narrative, but nevertheless, there's always an official narrative, right? And we're supposed to follow it, except we don't have to. So that's an empowering moment.
It is. And, honestly, my personality is one that I really like to observe myself kind of going through experiences or even look back on them and reflect. And it's been in doing that that's helped me to identify things that have helped me, right? Things that I can use to help others and share. And can we turn these helpful tools into something that I can teach, right? And so that has been really my journey in the last few years. But honestly, in those beginning months, I finally just decided to lean into fitness. And I mean, Walt, I'm an academic, right? I am not an athlete. I exercise every day and I am not ripped or fast. But all of a sudden I had a really powerful why. Sure. If you think that your mobility could be taken away, you feel a lot more motivation to show up.
Understandable. Yeah.
Yes. And I kind of came up with a layman's theory that if I could walk today, it'd be more likely that I could walk tomorrow.
Yeah.
So Okay.
I think it's actually quite reasonable.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that clicked for me. Could I create muscle memory so that even if I felt imbalance, I could get on the treadmill and I could walk and I could remind my legs, this is how we do it. This is how it feels. This is right. And what was really cool is that I ended up tripping over a whole research study at the University of Illinois. And the exercise neuroscience lab was basically in agreement with my layman's theory. So like, who knew? Like, maybe I missed my calling, but
it makes sense to me. And I'll tell you why it makes sense. I mean, when you mention what we think of as the poster child for MS, and I'm certain there is one, I honestly, perfectly honest, don't pay attention to the poster child because I have known one woman who has MS, and the only other experience I have with MS is a television character. Martin Sheen played the president of the United States having the exact form of MS you have, the relapsing remitting version. So those are the only two real experiences I have. And the woman that I know, I'm really impressed with her because from the moment that she had her diagnosis, like you, I mean, she went through her stuff first, but then she kind of turned it around in her mind. She runs a swing dance. She runs a monthly swing dance, has been doing it now for 25, 30 years, something like that. And basically, there have been times when she's been a little bit shaky. And when you dance with her, you have to kind of tone it down a little bit. But she doesn't let it stop her. And swing dancing, anybody who's ever done swing dancing, it takes some coordination. It takes a lot of stuff to do it. And she does it. And she does it effortlessly. And she does it because she decided she could do it. Mm-hmm. That decision is huge.
I always tell people, don't look for motivation. Look for your reason why. Then motivation will show up. When you have a powerful why for changing a behavior or creating a new habit, you'll just do it. You'll be motivated. You'll be excited about it because it matters, right? You've figured out why it matters to you to do that. So I'm not typically 365 days a year. I'm not unmotivated to work out. Mm-hmm. Most people are seeking for motivation, and I believe they're seeking for the wrong thing. They really need to be looking for why it matters to them. Then they will magically be motivated. And it's incredible. So I'm not ripped, I'm not fast, but I work out. And that fitness piece changed my outlook because it was something I could control. Yeah. It was a choice I could make. I could show up on the treadmill. I could be the boss of this space. And even though I didn't know what was going on with my body, MS wise, if the drug was working, I could show up and exercise. So I actually signed up for my first triathlon, and that was because it was a bucket list item that I was worried couldn't get checked off later in life when I had originally thought I would do it, right? Like in your 40s when you supposedly have time, except I'm in my 40s and I don't have time. So that's like a secret. I shouldn't have let the cat out of the bag. For all the
your secret is safe with us, I can promise you.
Young mothers that are hopeful that when their kids are older, like, oh dear, I have not found that yet. I have 4 teenagers and it is very, very busy. But
somehow you're smiling though when you say that. Somehow I think it isn't all that bad.
I love it. I'm living the dream, Walt. I am living the dream. There is no question. So the triathlon was powerful because here I had a plan: swim, bike, run. Do this day, do this the next day. I just looked at the plan. Okay, this is what I'm doing today. And it just forced me to show up in a way that felt so healthy, so good, and so powerful. And today with my clients in any of my teaching, I always say, fitness, water, gratitude. We have to have those figured out before we can move forward and make progress in other space. Sounds so simple, and it is, but until people get fitness, water, and gratitude checked off, they're stuck, right? Yeah. And they don't, it's very interesting. Anyways, hey, we have a new friend.
This is Daniel. Daniel, meet Leann. She is our guest today, and she is telling us the story about how she a number of years ago received a diagnosis of MS, and after getting through the initial shock and grief and so forth, basically applied all of her positive energy to turning her whole lifestyle around and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let this stop me. So Daniel, meet Leann.
Get it. Lovely to meet you, Leann.
Nice to meet you too. And yes, that was an excellent synopsis of where we've been so far. So here I'm embracing fitness, right? And that made all the difference. It was just, like I said, a piece of the puzzle that I could have a say in. And that felt so powerful. So it wasn't so in 2017, I actually had a relapse. So a relapse is where you probably have a new lesion. So there's a lot of, how sciencey do we want to be? So central nervous system is brain, neck, spinal cord, right? And when you have MS, your immune system is coming in and eating the nerve. And the nerve is like a banana and it's eating the peel. And so when that coating, or like if you thought of an electrical wire, when that plastic coating on the electrical wire has been eaten off by a mouse, there is a disconnect. We short circuit. And so the issues, symptoms, numbness, imbalance, fatigue are all happening because of those short circuits. Okay. So I had a new lesion in 2017, and that was near my brainstem, which I call like the high rent district of your central nervous system, right? Like it's like the New York City apartment of your central nervous system. You don't want to mess around with the brainstem because we're talking paralysis, vision loss, right? Life changing by a ranch, kind of like you're going to have to live different. And so I had to change drugs and I had to do something really aggressive because I was really scared. So hold on, I'm going to mute and you guys think of a question.
That's all right. No problem. This has been quite the introduction.
Hello, Mr. Walt.
Hello, Daniel. We haven't talked in a while, have we?
I know. You were vacationing and I was away, and now I'm back, and then I'm running away. Then I'm back.
Well, that's okay. The Daniel Mangana lifestyle. He's always
Yeah, back to it. It's really crazy that I'm going to be back on the road now for pretty much 2/3 of the rest of the year. Wow. I'm just literally lining up and going to a mastermind in Fiji in January. I'm going back to Necker Island in March. April, I'm doing something really cool. So yeah, the travel's picking up again.
Yeah, Leann, he had a really tough gig. He had to go visit with Richard Branson on his estate on Neckers Island. It was awful, you know.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound terrible. You are not kidding with your title, Dreamer CEO, huh?
He is. He truly is. He is a master at it. That's why I have him on the show. I mean, you always want to have the best people to talk to. That's why I have him on. Let me tell you.
I love it. So anyway, so here we are, 2017, I go on an aggressive treatment, and it was really a test for me because in some ways I felt like for the first almost 8 years that optimism worked, that being positive was the secret sauce, and that my disease was not going to progress if I just believed that it wasn't going to. And that was a lovely space to live until it didn't work, right? And the disease did progress, and I didn't get to live in my head in the sand world of like, maybe it will escape me because I believe it will. And that was a good lesson for me. And a lot of light bulb moments happened then because I was sad again, right? I felt the way I did when I was diagnosed. It didn't last as long. I gathered myself, made decisions quicker, moved forward. But it created a lot of value to my story. Until that point with that relapse, I kind of thought I had it too easy. I have a great family. I have health insurance, and I didn't really share my story a lot. Extrovert is my middle name, and I will tell my story to anyone, and I will talk to everyone. And I was willing to answer questions, but I didn't wear MS on my shirt front or on my forehead. And so I probably missed opportunities to share or to help others or to support others. And so in 2017, that changed. Now I'd gone through enough hard. I don't know who decided how much hard we have to go through to share our story. But in my mind, I had finally crossed that amount of hard that, Leann, you should share your story. You should meet people where they are. You understand people. And that's when I really started showing up online in spaces, creating my coaching program. All of that magic started happening after that relapse.
So you kind of treat that as crossing the Rubicon. Like this was a defining moment, but it was there to remind me I need to get out there. This is like the little kick I need to go out and say, here's my story. People need to hear it. Let's go do the work.
Totally. Well, and like when you have gone through experiences and you can actually say, I understand you, I've been there, that's powerful. And it was that realization. I can say that to a lot more people now. I have been there. I have gone before you. And, really my coaching is not like, I have no magic bullet for chronic illness. I wish I did. That would really be the ticket to wealth. But I know how to live with it. I know how to thrive even living with a chronic illness. I know how to move forward and be excited about other goals. Are you cheering me on?
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I was doing the finger clap, the finger snap. Hey girl, you girl.
And so that is the gift that I really want to share. And I believe that being I believe that being positive is like being a gifted musician. It doesn't matter how many lessons I take. I will never be a gifted musician. And you can see I'm sitting in the music room and I've taken a lot of lessons and I love it and it's worth it, but no one's ever going to pay me to play the piano. And that is okay. Right? You may not be gifted in the positivity space. It may not come easy to you. You may wake up with a rain cloud over your head and that's okay. It's worth it to learn. It's worth it to practice and to get better at it. And it's worth it for me to share my gift and for you to appreciate that, right? Think about all the gifted musicians that we appreciate their gift.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't hiding it because I'm not gifted, right? So why would I hide my gift because you're not good at it? It's crazy. And it's been a turning point in my whole philosophy about helping people be more positive. We hear it everywhere. We need to be more positive. We need to be optimistic. Positivity works. But what if you're not positive?
And it's a challenge. This is actually a topic we address quite often here on the program because we live in a society where there are tons of opportunity to feel lousy. I mean, just like tons of them. And it's just built in. It's baked into the culture. I mean, anyone who's into politics, hey, sorry, you're paying attention to negativity. Are you into watching the news? Guess what? You're into negativity. Do you like listening to or engaging in the entertainment world? Hey, I hate to clue you in, but most of it's negatively based. I mean, it's everywhere, so of course it's going to be a challenge. Actually, it's almost more amazing when we encounter somebody like you who just finds that it just comes so naturally. Like it's an easy thing. And the rest of us say, how on earth does she do that anyway? But the fact is we're all dealing with the same realm. We're all dealing with the same world. And because of that, we're learning. Some of us are choosing not to. Some of us are running away from it. But some of us are saying, I can see the benefits. I can tell the benefits. And personally speaking for myself, I have experienced the benefits of just shifting and working to shift. Sometimes it felt like I was working my way through molasses, but I would take my little tiny steps, and over time, not only can I see it, I got co-hosts who tell me I've seen so much growth in you in the last few years, so I know it's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And it was that very statement, like, oh, Leann, this has come so easy to you. Oh, after I have a conversation with you, I feel like I have a better outlook. And it was those conversations and comments just from friends, family, acquaintances that also encouraged me to move this direction and look back and observe, what am I doing different? What is it that is everyday default for me that I could teach and people could practice? And I want people to forget me. I want you to forget where you learned it and it just become who you are, right? It's important to me to help one patient at a time. And I focus on women with chronic illness because I understand them. But sometimes my chronic illness is my credibility on my resume. And people come to me and say, if you can do it, Leann, I want to learn from you because I don't have a chronic illness. And I'll have people say, now I don't have a chronic illness, but will you still work with me? Of course. And I love that. But
it gives you cred. It gives you what they call street cred because you've been there. You know what it's like. I mean,
Yeah.
it's reminding totally. I told you a bit before we started today's episode. I told you a bit about the history of the podcast, and I mentioned how I got things started. I was really enjoying it and so forth. Struggling the first year to get guests, and then I figured out get a co-host. Well, my very first co-host, was a gentleman named Joel Elston, who at that point was a therapist. He's now a life coach. But he was a therapist working in the Richmond, Virginia area. He says he is a recovering gambling addict. Let me tell you, he's already recovered, long past that. But he'll tell you that he's a recovering gambling addict. And he actually ended up, long story. He ended up going through this horrible time where he stole money. He ended up in Las Vegas, gambled all the money away, homeless, eating out of a dumpster behind a McDonald's. I mean, there's a whole story that went along with that. He went to jail. He went through all this other stuff. And then later on, he finds himself working with boys caught in the foster system, and not just any boys, the ones who are the worst cases, who are telling him, you can't possibly understand what I'm going through. And his response is, yes, I can. And here's why. And their mouths fall open. That kind of credibility is huge. And I mean, it's a different set of characteristics, but it's the same story. You have your own credibility through your own story because you've been through the hell of experiencing the diagnosis of MS and dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And well, you can relate to somebody who's been there. That is huge. That breaks through all kinds of barriers.
Totally. And I can't tell you the number of people that will start a sentence like this. Leann, this is going to sound crazy. And then they tell me something and it doesn't sound crazy to me.
You're right.
That is so affirming to a person to hear from someone that, like me, that's making progress, that feels content with her life. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that contentment is what we're all really going for. And I believe that we find contentment in progress. When we feel like we're making some progress, we will be much more content with our life. We are not going for a check mark. We are never going to be perfect. That is not the goal. That is not the expectation. The goal is progress. The people that recognize that they are a work in progress make more progress. Yet everyone is a work in progress. But the people that hold on to that, believe it, live it, they're the ones that are winning. And it's just so powerful.
The way you described it is interesting. I got to interrupt for a second there. The way you described that is interesting because you said, I think we all want to be contented. And then you describe how it's all about making progress. And I hear what you're saying. I just know in my own mind, the moment that I'm thinking about progress is the moment that I'm no longer feeling contented. Like I really don't want to feel contented right now. I want to make progress. So it's just a different way of thinking about it. It's perfectly legitimate. It's just a different way of thinking about it. And I like the way you're thinking about it. It's cool.
I just think that, we all have this long list of goals or expectations or ideals that we want for our life or for ourselves. And you might get a check mark in one space, but that just means that you're ready to work on the next space or the next self-improvement, the next goal, right? It's just so powerful. Yeah. And I've found for myself in 42 years, I am always working towards something. And It doesn't mean like it's heavy lifting. It might mean I'm drinking 8 ounces more of water, right? But I'm making progress in a space that's healthy. So I want to go back really quick because, we talk about dealing with the crummy. And one of the tools that I teach is perspective. Perspective is so powerful and it seems really obvious that we should have a healthy perspective, but I'm going to give you a tangible example that literally clicked for me within the first couple months after my diagnosis. So my left side was numb, right? I shared that. That was one of my loudest, earliest symptoms. Really, fatigue was equally loud, but I discounted the fatigue because of waking up with little kids. Yep. And now I look back and realize that while that did contribute, it really was a fatigue that wasn't solved with a nap. Okay. So my left side is numb. I get the diagnosis and I swear my left hand became more numb.
Well, of course.
But my focus was there. Right. And I would look at my left hand and I would just be salty. I would just be crabby. Like this left hand was telling me, Leann, you have MS. You have a chronic illness. This is who you are. You are 29. Your friends don't have to go through this, blah, blah, blah. Just all these emotions. And I would be so salty.
Sure. Well, and this isn't just a mental thing either, by the way. There is actually a physical side to this. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. but there's a definite physical side that when you give your attention to this stuff that you don't like, you're going to get more of it fast. And they actually can now measure it physiologically. This is something my sister-in-law told me about. She was pursuing a degree at that point in neuroscience, interestingly enough. She ended up getting her PhD in statistics, but she did so much work that she could have gotten in the neuroscience, I think. But anyway, she was telling me how with all the diagnostic and test equipment they have these days, they could literally wire somebody up in a lab and they could track from the moment that the person has a thought through the nervous system, through the endocrine system, through the blood system, through everything, down to a site of injury or illness. And if the thought was a negative thought, all of a sudden everything will start dying. All the cells will start dying. Everything, the body will be in collapse mode 90 seconds later. And if they reverse the process and get the person to think about something they're happy, joyful, and so forth, instead of that happening, all the signals will go down through the same system and you'll see healing going on in the exact same spot 90 seconds later. So there's a definite physiological side to this.
It's wild. And, I referenced the studies at U of I, and really that's one of their theories is that we know that fitness helps our cardiovascular system. We know it helps our muscular system. So why wouldn't it help our central nervous system? And they, I participated in a lot of research where you would take a cognitive test. Yeah. You would take a cognitive test, do a workout, take a cognitive test again, and realize that you'd actually done better right after you worked out. But anyways, okay, so I diverted. So here I am, my left hand.
Well, I diverted you, so you can blame me for that one.
I mean, I have been blamed for being windy, so you just have to keep me on track.
No, you're not bad. Let me tell you, I have had so many guests. You're easy. No problem.
Okay. So anyways, my left hand. Well, this is a practical watch, but I love watches. I like cheap ones, fancy ones, loud ones, all the watches. And in that moment, I'm looking at my left hand and I notice my really cute watch. And I think to myself, good job, Leann. Good job for buying that cute watch. Like that was money well spent. Okay. And this is just my personality. Like I notice that it's a distraction and it takes my attention away from my left hand. And I now have a thought process about something that brings me joy. It's a little thing. But I started calling it my frosting. And I believe that life can be like dry, crummy cake. Not the plan, not what you were hoping for, not the goal, right? But we're stuck with it. I can't change this chronic illness diagnosis. It is mine and I have to deal with it. And so when we bake a cake in the kitchen and we don't get what we wanted, what do? Right?
Well,
we
people
go
have
to
different responses. Some people just, stop and throw it in the trash and say, I'm done.
But when it's your kid's birthday and you used up all your ingredients, you're going to go to the cupboard and get frosting. You might need 2 jars, right?
Yeah.
And so I started looking at my life and all the things that make your day sweeter. Whether it's the sunshine, healthy kids, your dog, new Birkenstocks, old Birkenstocks, a call from a friend, a text from your grandma, whatever those things are, that by acknowledging them, noticing them, appreciating them was like applying frosting to the cake. Mm-hmm. I knew that everybody, including me, had wonderful things. I have wonderful things in my life, but when we don't acknowledge them, when we don't pause and notice and appreciate, it's like frosting in the jar. It's not helping the cake. It's still frosting. It's still sweet. But to actually have an impact on our cake or on our life, we need to have a practice, really a gratitude practice. And so my frosting theory has helped me for over a decade. I celebrate Frosting Fridays. We talk about it in our house. All the things that are frosting. And it's
Frosting
incredible.
Fridays. I love that. That's a great name. I really like that one.
Thank you. It's just interesting there's a wonderful domino effect when I share that I love my Birkenstocks and then my friend's like, oh my word, I bought those same Birkenstocks and I love mine too. Now she had a moment where there was more value to this purchase that she made 6 months ago.
Sure.
But, right. And all of a sudden my hand was less numb.
Yeah, I believe it.
And right? Because my perspective changed, because my focus changed. So the power of that tool is insane. So if I can teach
you're
people,
hitting on something here that we talk about a lot, the power of appreciation or gratitude, whichever way you want to look at it. And I can't tell you how many episodes, I told you how many episodes we had done. I can't tell you how many of them have addressed it, but it's probably close to 40-50% of them where we have at least at one point during the episode mentioned it because it's such an important thing. So here you come in and you're talking about how you've had this wonderful effect dealing with this really dread disease, and you're using appreciation to get better. Like, whoa, man, this is like right in our wheelhouse. This is fabulous. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to let you know you're hitting the nail right on the head.
I'm glad that we are in violent agreement, Walt. I love
violent agreement.
But it's just incredible. And so here's the thing. You can buy all the skincare in the world, but if you don't use it, it's not going to help your skin. So I can teach people all the tools, right? But if they are not practicing them, if they're not lifting the weights, if they're not applying the anti-aging cream, nothing is going to actually work. So I love learning. Okay. And so much so that I have decided that education is the most honorable form of procrastination. Because this is true, right? Well, I mean, yeah, okay. I'm famous for
That's why I'm chuckling. I mean, this is like perfect.
Yeah, because, and I say this right now because I can teach all your people all the tools. Mm-hmm. But if they don't use them, if they don't apply what they have learned, there will be no change.
That's right.
There won't. And that's the part of teaching the tools and people owning them and then kind of forgetting where they learned it. That's the part, that's like my dream, my vision, where people are like, I don't even remember. I've been doing this for so long that blah, blah, blah. I don't even know where it came from. Mm-hmm. That's my vision, is to teach these to so many people, for them to pick up the book, to hear the speech, to walk away, have interactions with the people that they love differently, to have interactions with the challenges differently, to move through their day in a way that is actually more positive. They feel more positive about their life, about their day, about everything. And it's just so exciting because I know it's possible.
Yeah. It is exciting, isn't it? Because when you know that you're onto something that first of all resonates with you, and clearly this resonates with you, just the way that you're expressing yourself makes it very abundantly clear. It resonates with you in a really, really big way. So whenever we're talking about something that resonates with ourselves, we're going to be excited about it. And we're going to be in that space of, I can hardly wait to tell everybody else about this. I can hardly wait to see other people starting to adopt this into our lives.
Totally.
To be honest, that's one of the reasons I do a podcast. I love the fact that I've been doing this for years, working on myself, basically in front of an audience, and then getting emails and text messages and, Facebook Messenger and so forth from people saying, oh, I was so inspired by that episode that you did the other day. I didn't expect that, but it comes anyway. And it just kind of keeps fueling that same fire. And all of a sudden I get even more excited than I was before. So when I hear your excitement, I think, well, first of all, this is somebody who has been getting that kind of feedback. And so it's been helping to fuel her. But second of all, perhaps even first, if you want to put it in the right order, she already had it going. She already had that building and she's been building it all along. So I'm loving the story. I'm loving the attitude. I'm loving the way that you basically took lemons, turned it into a lemonade stand, like my friend Heidi, who runs the Heidi Lemonade Stand podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You turned it into a lemonade stand, and I love it. It's fabulous.
Well, it's just so exciting because after people say, Leann, how do you do it? How are you so positive? How? It was in those conversations that I reflected and realized you can be this too. You can feel this way too. It doesn't mean that you're going to turn into the gifted musician, but you can enjoy music and you can sit down and play your piano and you can be more positive on your way to work because of tools that I have taught you. And I love speaking, right? I mean, I love standing up and speaking and sharing my story.
I can tell.
Yeah. It's never it doesn't take us very long to get to that point.
No, it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Captain Obvious here. Okay. But I don't want to just inspire people. I share my story for sure. It's part of what I teach, but I really, really want you to walk away and live differently, to go into your day differently, to feel like you can deal with the hard parts better, right? Like you're stronger. You have lifted the weights and you will continue to do it. We don't get to do one workout and stay strong forever. So it has to be a constant practice. There's a lot of these things I don't write down. I don't have them in a habit tracker. It's just what I do. But
Sure.
Other people, or maybe at the beginning or something new I'm trying, I'm writing it down. I'm giving myself check marks, and it's just crazy. And it's just so exciting because it doesn't have to be just me that feels hope.
Well, I mean, what you're describing about how you really love it when people actually pick it up, start running with it, and so forth. It's a very similar thing to the reason why I subtitled the program Your Daily Dose of Happy. Because literally my goal with every episode is that when a listener tunes in and when they're done listening to the episode, they're in a better space than when they moved in. If they're feeling better than after they start listening to the episode, it's a win. And
totally.
So I think about it differently from the way you're thinking about it. You think about it in terms of literally how they're applying it in their lives. But really, it's the same thing. We're asking somebody to take something that we're creating and bring it into their life and make their lives better.
Totally. And I mean, Walt, when I did my branding photos, I had donuts made because they made me smile. So my goal with my pictures was, how do you brand happy and joy? How do you do that? Right. And so I had donuts made and had stacks of donuts because it's hard to look at a donut and not smile, especially if it's pretty, especially right. And so, and one of my favorite pictures from that photo shoot, my kids were throwing sprinkles at me. And so, because to create this like spontaneous joy, right? Because I want people to look at it and pause and smile. It's just so powerful. And it has been a little bit of an elusive brand, but the photo shoot and my photographer really, really helped capture this bright, sunshiny, let's smile more.
And I know what photo you're talking about, by the way, because you included it in, we met through the Podmatch system and you included it in your list of Podmatch photos. So I know exactly which photo it is. And it is a joyful photo. I mean, it's almost like you're in the midst of a parade on Wall Street or something like that. You know, just like the confetti pouring down on you is kind of what it looks like. And you got this big smile on your face. It's great. I love it.
But it is interesting. And I love that, you know, Your Daily Dose of Happy, it really, it does align with my mission and my hope for people. And it's powerful. So here I am.
I think it's important. I think it's really important.
It is. It's totally important. And so here I am. I now have changed my perspective. I'm noticing frosting, and that's helping a lot. Yeah. That was probably, that and fitness changed my direction. It really closed the door on the pity party. And I'll tell you something that one of my clients said. She said, Leann, you know what? My situation did not change, but my perspective did after working with you. And that is the goal, right? Because there's no cure. I can't solve symptom management. That's not my lane. That's not my expertise. But to help people with their mental strength. Can we maybe say that mental strength is the new self-care?
Yeah.
So I am the first, I love go get your nails done, go to lunch with a friend, do all the things that are self-care, right? But can we do those every day? Probably not. We're all busy and schedules don't align. But what if we talked about mental strength as self-care? Well,
that's just it. I mean, because self-care doesn't have to be limited to just going to get your nails done. You can apply self-care in a lot of different ways on a daily basis if you get creative enough. It's just a question of, are you willing to figure out what's going to be self-caring for you on a daily basis?
Exactly. So I am working through this theory that mental strength really is the new self-care. If I can be a good boss of myself, if I can be a good boss of my resources, if I can be a good boss of my energy, and now we're talking. Now I'm really taking care of myself because I'm in charge up here and I'm not letting those outside. You talked about the world around us, and I should probably give a disclaimer that
Okay.
I would rather be uninformed than misinformed. And so
That's fair.
I consciously make a choice to be somewhat uninformed about some things happening in the world
Mm-hmm.
that I can have no impact on.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that comes from a skepticism of information out there and being concerned about being misinformed and letting that have an impact on my day, my life, my relationships, my progress.
Sure.
So that's a conscious choice of mine, and that doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. But it does.
Well, the part that does work for everybody is being able to make a conscious choice. It may not be that particular one, but
Correct.
it's the activity of making a choice and deciding what am I going. I've got options right now. Which option am I going to take? Rather than, well, I'll just go with whichever one. Because that's basically just giving in and saying, I'm just going to go with default. Default for the rest of my life.
Exactly. And that's a terrible plan. And it's so exciting when people can choose a goal and make progress towards it. Yeah. I always laugh and say my mom has to tell me when there's a tsunami because I really don't know, that she'll be like, Leann, there's a tsunami over across the world, but I was doing just fine in my space and I had enough on my plate without worrying about the tsunami. And I admire the people that are invested and do all the things in all the places. But they're not, right? We can only do the things in our space and show up in the places that we've identified are super important to us, that are a priority. Let's be careful about saying priorities. Let's talk about priority, right? And show up in a big way and make a big difference. So I know we didn't really mention this, but I did start a nonprofit 8 years ago to raise money for patients living with MS. And that's a good space for my volunteer hours because it is a one event wonder. It's a kids triathlon. So we talked about the triathlon that I signed up for that changed my story. I soon realized that I wanted to fundraise and to help patients because the chronic costs are such a burden to so many families that don't have insurance like I do. And that felt like it's always good to do something good with the crummy part of your story. So powerful to say, I'm going through this hard thing. And because of that, and because my eyes are open, I can do something good for someone else. Crazy amazing. So I started the nonprofit, and while our primary goal is to raise money for those patients, our secondary goal is to inspire kids to love fitness.
Oh, very good.
Because, right, it made such a difference in my life.
Yeah, sure.
And so many people view fitness as a prescription. The doctor says, you need to work out, right? No one wants a prescription. They do not want, and that's the way they view movement and fitness. So what if we backtracked and helped kids fall in love with fitness? And there's nothing like race energy. I mean, it's so exciting. It's addicting. Everybody shows up. They've worked hard to show up and do well, right? It's just amazing. People are there cheering, volunteers. Everybody's there together. I can't even tell you. I still have a buzz going because it's the second Saturday in June every year, and we've hosted it for 8 years, and we've raised a lot of money, and it feels so good. And, the money raised is amazing, but the kids that come up to me and say, I can't wait to come back next year and I'm going to beat my time. And thank you, Mrs. Stickel. And it's just the best. It's the best day and the best event. And I forget why I shared that.
You're talking about the benefit of joy. I mean, you were bringing it up in the context, obviously, of your nonprofit, but you're really bringing it up in the context of what we were talking about a moment ago, choosing joy. We get to make choices in our lives. And Dan actually had to duck out for a little bit because he had something that came up in the midst of the show here. So he kind of missed a really important portion because you were talking about how you knew you couldn't have that perfect life. You couldn't get to the perfect place you wanted to be in. So you started just doing little things that you could do. And I kept thinking about a theme that Dan teaches all the time. He teaches it to his clients. He teaches it here on the show and so forth. The idea of what he calls micro steps. taking little micro steps every step along the way. Dan, she was doing a beautiful job of teaching your program. You should have heard it. It was great.
I'm sure Leann added her own secret spice to it.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah. And her secret spice is just absolutely pure optimism. This is one of the most optimistic women I've ever met in my life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry
so
about
kind.
that. I had a call from my business partner in Dubai, and it was late over there. So I was like, what's going on? And he had to take care of some stuff. So
yeah,
I'm sorry that I missed it.
No problem. No problem at all. Absolutely. No
You're
problem.
good. I mean, I have 4 teenagers. Like the amount of interruptions that I have endured for the last 19 years, this is nothing.
I am sure that that's true. So, okay. We've covered a lot here. We've covered some really great stuff. And one of the other things that we talked about, Dan, that you kind of missed, we spent a lot of time talking about the beauty of joy and the beauty of happiness and how much it can actually, the act of choosing, what you're going to give your attention to and what you're not going to give your attention to and how you're going to feel about stuff can have wondrous impacts on your life. We've talked about that a lot here on the show. Well, Leann was giving us direct examples of how it actually helped her deal with this condition that she deals with on a daily basis and has actually helped her to achieve instant improvement. She could feel improvements just because she's been focusing on feeling good and focusing on what she loves and focusing on what her dreams are and not getting hung up on what she could easily be hung up on. It's been truly inspiring. So, Leann, I got to ask you now that we've kind of laid the foundation, laid the groundwork, so to speak, you work with women primarily who often have a similar condition, although you also made the point that sometimes they don't have a condition like that, but they want to work with you anyway because they're so inspired by you. So that's where you've been so far. Where are you going next, though? Are you just continuing this path, or are you growing it out? Are you branching it in some way?
Okay. So really the goal is coach, author, speaker. Right?
Okay.
The author part is about 10,000 words in, and I don't have it all nailed down, but because it has to be different, it has to be usable, and it has to be like you're going to flag the pages. It's not my memoir. It's going to be a usable tool for people to have in their purse, in their back pocket, stick it in your glove compartment. That's my vision for the book. But my coaching, it is one-on-one and or group. I do a group program and I call it a Bring the Joy Boot Camp. And I spend 4 weeks with them, teaching them tools to be more joyful, to be more positive and make more progress. I don't know if you were here, Dan, but I feel like contentment is found in progress. When we are making progress, we feel more content. When we're making no progress, we feel less content. And really contentment equals happiness. And I think sometimes, choose happy and all of that, it gets a bad rap. And I wish it was like, choose content. How do we find contentment? And because that's just a touch deeper. Not that I think we need to be deep, but it is. It's been my investigation into happy. So coaching, group coaching, speaking, and hopefully author. But I mean, have you authored a book? It seems to be a challenge for this girl.
Dan has actually authored bestsellers. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. And I have authored my own book, and I've also helped edit a book. So we get it. We know exactly what you've been through on that. And it's a journey. It's like all this stuff. It's a journey going through writing a book. And I think it's a helpful journey, not only to the people that you're writing to, but to yourself.
I do. And honestly, it is very motivating because I was there 12 years ago. And so to create something that I know would have helped me, that comes from a very honest place. And it's my vision is clear. And I feel like a book is the best business card for speaking. It helps people to understand your content, what you're bringing to the table, the value that you could bring to their group, right? Why would they hire me as a speaker? Well, a book would help that. So we are moving all the puzzle pieces or all the game board pieces at the same time, which is probably not advised, but I'm an Enneagram 3, I'm a firstborn. I just am going to keep going and get the check marks.
I'm an Enneagram 3 as well.
See, we have to stick together. Our multitasking should not be shamed. I always say I had 4 kids in 5 years on purpose. And I did. I had 4 kids in 5 years on purpose, and it is lovely and amazing. And empty nest is going to be extremely sad and fast. That was a downside that I did not predict. But here we are.
It was kind of inevitable, but nevertheless, yeah, it probably wasn't the first thing on your list when you said, yeah, I want to do this.
No, and what I wanted was for 4 kids that we could all go do things together, right? We'd be in the same space together, and we have done that. And unfortunately now they're all going to exit, and then I'll be left with the dog. And, it's all good. I'm in a new chapter, and because of my relapse in 2017 and the space that 2020 created for me, that's why I'm here today. Because of those things, the stars kind of aligned for me to head this direction and realize a dream that I hadn't paused long enough to realize. So it's really exciting, and I love what I'm doing.
And tying into what we were talking about earlier, this is leading to another one of those junctions where you get to make a choice. How am I going to respond to this situation? All of a sudden, I'm an empty nester. That's what you're pointing toward right now. And when you get there, you'll have actually a number of different choices, but you'll have that one big overarching choice. How am I going to respond to this? Am I going to be depressed and, crawl into my corner? Or am I going to go out and do the next phase of my life? And what's that going to look like? And what do I want it to look like? And you're choosing the latter.
Totally. And, I think that the hard things, it's really good to make peace with them. And I encourage my clients to kind of put them on a shelf, like to actually visually picture putting your chronic illness on a shelf, because it gives it a lot of respect, and it's handy, like it's just right there. And if you need to get it down and learn more or do more research, you can, but let's just put it on the shelf so that it's out of our way and we can focus over here on things that are exciting to us and interesting to us and gonna actually move the needle, and I can have a say in, and it's a big deal to work with a life coach to step back from your life and look at the big picture, because how many times do you actually do that? And, I boil life down to 6 areas, and people think their life is so complicated, and it's 6 areas, and we can really dial into what you want to improve pretty quickly. So anyways.
Really good. Well, all right. Well, then that leads to the obvious question. Let's say somebody wants to work with you, or perhaps they just want to learn more about you, or they just want to find out, what your story is, or maybe they just want to be on the list when you have your book come out. So how do they find Leann Stickel?
Yep. Super easy. LeannStickel.com. I spend the most time on Instagram at I am Leann Stickel. And at the beginning of the year, I started a Facebook group because as much as I love Instagram, it's not as community-esque as a Facebook group. So because I was kind of craving connection or helping people connect with other people and wanting to facilitate that, I did start a Facebook group called Not Defined by Chronic Illness. And that's free too. So any of those places you can find me.
Really, really good. I love this.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's excellent. Dan, I kind of feel bad because I really wanted to have more of a chance to catch up with you and include you in the conversation, but
I got to tune in. I got to tune in and was late and had to run off, but it was great to hear from Leann and share her with the audience. I'm sure everyone's going to be inspired to be more content in their lives. Your daily dose of content.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and I think, Walt and I talked about this. Lean into hope. There is hope for you. If you think that if you are naturally pessimistic, skeptical, right? You wake up with a rain cloud, there's hope for you. You can become more positive. It doesn't mean that you're going to be Sally Sunshine, but you can learn and you can practice and get better at it. And it's just such a beautiful thing for people that feel frustrated with that part of their personality or that part of their life. So that's the hope really that I want to offer. And, sharing my story is telling everybody, like, I have proved these tools. This isn't just like, clicking my heels. I live at Disney World life, right? This has been tested. I have lived it and it hasn't been easy, but it's worked. So anyways, you have to shut me off. Just, Leann, we're turning you off. I will never stop talking.
I think you just gave a beautiful summary to the entire program. So I don't think there was anything that needed to be turned off there. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you. And I have attempted a podcast, so I know how much work it is. So thank you for all your efforts.
The first 100 are the tough ones. The first 100 are the tough ones. After that, it gets really easy. I promise. It really does. Daniel knows he's a podcaster. He knows what it's like. Is it true or false, Dan? The first are the hard
pretty
ones.
darn true. Yeah. Once you get past the fact that 2 people listen to your first 100 or so, then you can start having some fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right.
You guys make a good sales pitch for it, so maybe I'll get back at it.
Yeah, awesome. Go for it. You got a lot to say. Say it. I think it's important. I think it's very important. Well, thank you, first of all, for spending the time telling us about it and sharing the story with us. And thank you for what you're continuing to do. And Daniel, I'm looking forward to perhaps getting at least a couple more visits before you go off on your world tour. So,
I'll be here next week. I can jump in. Then the week after that, when I'm in Europe, it's going to be easiest. When I'm in Dubai, it's just not going to happen. It's like 2:00 in the morning. It's just no bueno.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to the ones when you are going to be there. So
indeed.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much. And
right.
Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We appreciate you so much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.